Hey friend, welcome to the Halfway to Dead podcast. I'm your host, Jen Lovell. Listen, you and I have reached that age where we are done with the bullshit. We know that midlife is our chance to flip the script and experience life on our own terms. It's time to reconnect with our higher selves and reclaim our inner peace. Are you ready with an open heart and an open mind? Awesome, you're in the right place. Hop in and ride shotgun with me on this midlife spiritual journey. Hi guys, just a couple of things before we talk about today's episode. I have a favor to ask. If you haven't clicked that follow button yet, please do so. And also don't forget, you can click the download button and it'll save that episode for you to listen to later. All of these things help us to get a boost with the algorithms and so that more people can find us. Okay, I appreciate it. So for today's episode, we're addressing a growing problem, okay? The high suicide rate in the veterinary profession and what we can do to help. So this is another know better, do better situation. Okay, so listen to all the way to the end as my guest and I discuss why this is happening and what we can do to help. Okay, so who's my guest? Well, only one of my favorite people. And yes, I am biased because he's my son, Dr. Tyler Lovell. Tyler is an emergency room veterinarian who practices in one of the largest multi-specialty clinics in Los Angeles, California. He works overnights, so you guys, he sees it all. So we focus a lot on the ER vet perspective, but this applies to all veterinarians and honestly everyone that's in the veterinary profession at all. Okay, they're all feeling this. So if you're thinking that the main cause for the high suicide rate is animal euthanasia, of course, that's part of it, but it's not the biggest problem. So you're going to have to listen to hear all about it. And this one's a bit longer, but this is really an important issue. And I believe it's worth the listen. Listen to this one all the way to the end because we go over a lot of great stuff. And then we are releasing a bonus episode this week where I take Dr. Lovell through different scenarios we run into with our pets. And he lets us know if we can wait it out for our vet clinic to open or if we need to just head straight to the ER. So make sure and give that one a listen too. And also listen to the end of this episode because he gives us some dating advice. Yep. The vets know how to spot those red flags with their partners. So we had a lot of fun conversations in this one. And this subject is dear to my heart for obvious reasons because my son is a veterinarian. So let's jump in and learn all about it. Hey, Dr. Lovell, thank you for being here today. This is a really important subject. I know we've talked about this before, but on this show, we talk a lot about during our spiritual journeys and that one of the things we need to do is start being better fucking people. And so that's kind of what this episode is heading towards. We're learning how to take a pause, look at things from a 360 degree so that we're not judging and making negative comments, being negative people when it's completely unnecessary. And sometimes we don't know how to do that until we can look at it from all sides. So you're here to help us today because we need to see the opposite side of what's going on in the veterinary world. And I want to throw a couple stats at you and see if any of these surprise you whatsoever. I don't think it will, but I'm going to throw them out there. So a CDC study shows that veterinarians are 4 times more likely to die by suicide than the general population. It also shows that about 80% of veterinarians suffer from clinical depression at some point during their career. And also 70% have already had a colleague or a peer die by suicide. And honestly, this is completely unacceptable. And so does any of that surprise you at all?
No, not at all.
Not at all.
No, it actually sounds like lower. I feel like you hear about so many things from
this is just
not just small animal, but everywhere, like vets in general in every field.
Yeah. And we're focusing on you as a veterinarian, but this goes for everyone in the veterinary industry. This goes for people working at the front desk. This goes for the technicians. Mm-hmm. This goes for people even in rescue. This goes for everybody whose daily job focuses on our pets, on our animals. And so these numbers are probably low because this is just what's been reported. There's probably many other things going on and other stats that don't even get reported. But you know from your angle that this is a huge, huge, huge problem.
Yeah, because you're even talking about like just stats of veterinarians, right?
Yes.
Too, which is different because then when you talk about the periphery to that, like the whole staffing problem.
Oh, the numbers probably shoot way up.
From the front desk to the techs, even the turnover rates, like at any moment, it's like 1 in 4 people are quitting and leaving. So
Exactly.
It's like, that's putting stress on everybody because the field's so burnt out.
Yes.
Do it long.
So I wanted to start at the very beginning with people so that we can start to really understand this, just the whole profession. Because I talk to people, because as you guys all know, this is my son. And so I talk to you about this stuff all the time. And when I throw that stat out, people look at me like I have to be making that up because they pretty much think you guys are playing with puppies and kittens, which is not the case. And so I want to start at the beginning because I don't even think people understand what goes into what you have to do to even be a veterinarian. People don't get it. Okay. This is not a 2-year community course, you guys. So walk us, no, but some people just don't have any clue. So walk us through literally from the minute, okay, I've graduated high school and I want to be a veterinarian. Tell us what this process is like.
Yeah, I think there's 4 years for anybody, no matter what major you do.
Your undergrad. Mm-hmm.
So you go to undergraduate. The only requirement usually for any school is the prerequisites. Typically, people are in the sciences. It's usually how you get all of your requirements. But I've also seen a lot of people that are any major that get the prereqs either during their 4 years or whenever, even afterwards.
You have to go back and get it. Because this is really science heavy. Yeah. And so then.
Yeah. So it's 4 years that, and then 4 years vet school. So 8 years minimum. Assuming you don't have any gap years between vet school, assuming you get in your first try, assuming all of those things. Usually people do a year rotating internship after you graduate vet school. So usually, like for me, it was 9 years. And then if you want to do a specialty, depending on what specialty you want, I would say on average, that's like 3 years, assuming you don't have to do specialty internships to get that, which is usually the case for things like cardiology or surgery and other programs. Yeah. So
we're talking 12 in total hardcore years of school.
I would say minimum, we're talking 8 years, but I think 8 to 9 with internship is like the standard. 8 would be like the minimum.
Yeah.
But if you want to do anything else additional, it's like.
But let's just rewind because here's what people don't understand. So how many vet schools are there in the entire United States?
I think there's like 31. I don't know. You have to fact check me. Around 30.
30. Okay. So the thing is, it's not like human medical school, you guys, because there's not that many vet schools to get into. And the acceptance rate and the class size is what? Like your class started with how many students, would you say?
I think on average, every vet school is around 100.
100 people. And then how many of your class graduated, actually finished the whole 4 years?
Most of them. I would say like almost all. Okay,
good. So, but that's still only 100 coming out of that school.
I think the problem too isn't just the sheer how many vets are graduating, which is the problem just like magnitude wise from.
No, that's not the problem. But I'm just trying to get people to understand like what it takes and also understand that most veterinarians get out of school and owe a shit ton of money, okay, for in-student loans. So this is a huge, huge commitment people are making to become a veterinarian, okay? Yeah. Their time, their money, everything. Okay, so a lot goes into it. So also...
It just doesn't, I mean, when you think about it from that perspective, like it doesn't make sense from a purely financial perspective to go to vet school, right? No. Because there's so many ways to make money. There's so many ways in the world to get your head start without starting with hundreds of thousands of debt, right? So, and on top of that, when you talk about like income of veterinarians compared to other health professionals, salary wise, it doesn't make sense either, right? Because a lot of these people, if you're going to do 11, 12 years of schooling and you're going to be making $800K plus a year, like it's just a different scenario.
Right. Because the average is 100,000. That number goes down depending on what area you're in. It goes up, but it also goes down and up with cost of living. So essentially, this isn't a highly profitable profession. Okay. Our veterinarians aren't rolling around just living the high life. Okay. And keep in mind, they're paying back these loans and they're getting charged interest. So it's going up as they're paying it off. It's college is expensive anyway, but
I think the flip side to that too. And I think there's a lot of people already out there on social media talking about it, like veterinarians, about the shift of like, I shouldn't feel bad to make good money either. Like, I think that's also a shift, right? Because people, when you make good money in vet med, feel bad, and I think then oh, you only care about the money, you only care about this. And it's like, at the end of the day, I think we walk that line a lot of like, but this is a business. This is
absolutely
hard work. This is mentally draining. These are jobs that not everybody could do, right? And
nobody out there listening, all you guys out there listening, you won't accept less from your job, right? You're there to make money, just like everybody, just like veterinarians. And so here's the thing. It's stressful as it is. And we have a big shortage of veterinarians right now. So when we're calling to get an appointment, know that like there aren't enough vets to even see all the pets. Because what's your opinion of how the pandemic, did the pandemic change things a little bit? Was there an increased number of, I feel like everybody was getting pets.
Definitely. I think vet med in general blew up because the amount of pets went up even more than it already was. So there's disproportionate even more to the amount of pets to doctors available. So it made it worse, I would say.
Yeah, because I feel like everybody sat home and it was like, oh, well, if I'm going to be home, like now's the time to get the new puppy. Now's the time to go rescue a cat.
And people just bringing their pets in more because they're seeing them more because they're home all the time and they're seeing the problems.
You're just noticing all the things about your pet when you're around him more. Okay, so now, and then we now treat our our pets are like family now. Because back in the day, like I remember my grandmother, if cats had extra litters of kittens, like they had just gotten through the Great Depression. Like they weren't out fixing them, taking care of them. Okay, they were. Right? They just lived outside. That's what it was.
Well,
nobody cared.
Everyone's just like, oh, we didn't used to do that. It's like, well, you probably should.
No,
nothing used to be that way.
They absolutely should have. But I'm saying our mindset on pets has changed now. There are children, basically. Everyone says fur babies. Yeah, we love our damn pets. Okay, like that's just how it goes. And I feel like everybody in your profession, would you say a lot of them, you guys are already kind of empaths? You already feel deeply. Because you wouldn't do all of these all these years of school and everything else if you didn't actually love animals. Okay. You wouldn't do all this. You'd be out of here. Yeah. You'd quit. I feel like emotionally, your profession's a little bit at risk already because you know what I mean? You already have a deep love for these animals. And so this is a problem. When I've talked to people, they have said, when I give them the statistic about veterinarians having one of the highest suicide rates, again, they look at me like I'm nuts. And then they automatically assume that the reason for that is euthanasia, which that's got to be a part of it. But what really are some of the real problems? Because it's not just seeing sick animals every day. The problem goes deeper than that. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think there's so many different angles to talk about it from. I think that the burnout, like obviously euthanasia is, especially for me, because I work ER, I work overnight ER. So my amount of quality of life conversations, amount of euthanasias is already going to be disproportionately higher than most other people within small animal medicine, right? Because I don't see pets on a good day ever. Right?
No.
Like that's never a scenario I'm seeing. And so I think for me, the burnout, obviously, if I'm like euthanizing multiple pets one after another, which happens frequently, I think that impacts me. But I also think that I've created my own way of thinking about those things where I don't feel so deeply about it in the moment, right? Because I think, and I've talked to even our social worker and different vets that have been practicing longer than me. Because when I first started, I would get all consumed, right? And then talking to people, you start to realize, wait a minute, it's actually not fair for me to put myself through the exact state of every owner that's walking through this store that's having to euthanize their pet, right? I think it's an unfair thing for any human being to have to ride that intense emotional burden one after, like it's literally not sustainable. And so the way I think about it is I'm ending suffering. Like this pet wasn't going to get better. And I think that any pet going out with dignity and not having to suffer is how I choose to look at those scenarios. I think they're sad. And obviously I am sad, but I think there's a certain point where you have to. Well,
you have the confidence to know because you have the knowledge to know that this is the absolute right decision.
And I think a lot of the times owners need that. And I think that's why people talk about me relative to other even ER doctors in the euthanasias I do. It's like people, when you have really frank, real, raw conversations with people, they make tough decisions because you walk them through that, right? Like I've also seen on the flip side, other veterinarians, people I've seen before vet school, in vet school that just don't have the conceptual conversation with owners, because a lot of people don't know when it's time if you don't bring it up
that's really hard.
So I think all of that's just a huge journey for people. Like talking to one of the social workers even at my work about how every single thing you do every day is trauma, right? And so for you to think that you have to process or have to unpack every single person's trauma every single day, like it's not my job, right? My job is to show compassion, give people a medical perspective on what's going on and what those steps look like, whether we continue or whether we don't, right? And that's like where the line is of what I have to do, right? What I don't have to do is sit and listen to people crying and pouring out their whole trauma story one after another, right? Like I do that a lot, like to be honest, I do that a lot for a lot of people, but I think that when it gets to be too much, sometimes you can't give 100% of yourself to every single euthanasia, every single owner. And I think that's okay. I think for the general public, that's hard to hear. And I think that sounds cold, but I think from the veterinary perspective, it's so difficult to make that sustainable. And when you talk about emergency medicine and moving forward, there's a reason why the average, at least in California, the average ER doctor usually is in emergency for 4 to 5 years, right? And there's a reason why nobody can do it long term is because the expectations from owners are unreasonable. The expectations we put on ourselves are unreasonable, right? Like I think that there's so many different angles, right? Because it's not just the pressure we put on ourselves to be perfectionists, to do the most, but it's dealing with owners in a wide range of like mental states.
Absolutely. Because what we really need from the veterinarian is your clinical expertise, your confidence that this is the right decision for our pet. And yes, you need to make the environment compassionate and proper for the euthanasia process, but it is not up to you guys to be then our personal counselor, our personal, we need to head back to our friends, to our family, to everybody else to support us through that loss. And what people don't understand is you really don't have the time to spend 20 minutes, with us while we're upset and crying, because you've got 5 more animals that could possibly pass away that need your attention. And sometimes we don't understand that because we get in our world of like, this is my pet. I love it. It's the center of this world right now. Right. And sometimes we forget that also everybody, because when we're waiting in the waiting room, if you're waiting for 3 hours, and we don't look at it this way, but we need to reframe it because that means that you're probably going to go back home with your pet. Your pet's going to get good care. You're going to go back home with it. Waiting is actually a good thing in the emergency room, because if you're getting brought straight back, shit's hitting the fan, that means your pet is way sicker than all the rest. Okay. And so if we're having to wait longer, that's actually a good thing, because that means that our pet has something going on that is fixable and it's not the highest priority. And I know we don't think of that at 2 a.m. when we're waiting in the waiting room, right? We just want our dog taken care of.
And people are like that. Like I work overnight, so people are already arguably more unhinged, even when they're not typically. But we deal with people like that. It doesn't even matter what time it is. Everybody
thinks they're the most important.
Every single vet hospital comes in, and I don't know if my area that I'm in right now is like disproportionately higher with like privilege and people thinking that they can walk in and snap their fingers and get whatever they want, like it's a drive-through.
Right. Like I have money, save my pet. And it's like, it's not just about
I've
money.
Had so many people that wave around their credit cards and money is no object and this and that. And it's like, well, if you want to even talk about the flip side of like money aside, and the conversation that I actually have a lot because I deal with a lot of people that can't afford anything.
Right.
Which is a whole nother hurdle for us to say, okay, we can afford it, but should we? Right. Like it's a whole nother conversation that I have with people all the time is like, we can, but should we is the thought. Sometimes.
Right. Because you have a lot of people who have no problem dropping $20,000 and they're fine, even if it only gives their pet 2 more weeks. And so at that point, we have to think, okay, but what kind of 2 weeks is that even going to be for them? And then we're going to be back in the same spot. So it's really not just about. And I walk
through the scenario, and it doesn't matter what is wrong with the pet. But if it's a scenario where, let's say a pet needs surgery, this is the most likely thing going on, and this is the prognosis, whether that's like 1 to 3 months, whatever it may be. Like there's some people, money aside, that will say, well, I don't want to put my pet through all of that for a month. or 3 months.
Right.
And that's like, okay, then we have our answer. But there's some people out there that'll say, if we can buy a month, that's worth it for us. And the thing is, and something that I've learned is my personal opinion on whether somebody should or shouldn't continue isn't necessarily the most important thing. My most important thing is to tell you we can do all of these things and we could still end up having a euthanasia conversation. We could still end up saying your pet's not getting better. Or we could say your pet went through surgery. Here's still the prognosis. But it's making sure, and I think from a doctor perspective, what makes you a good doctor is explaining every step of the way before it happens, right? Because
yes.
I see oftentimes in referral cases I get where we didn't have really good conversations with owners, right? And I've seen that from even the veterinary side of things of like, okay, we transferred this pet here. The owners doesn't have any financial constraints, but I end up euthanizing because I have that conversation. Or we turf things to a more specialty level hospital that can take things to the next level. And we didn't have the conversation about like, these are the financial components to this.
Right.
And we get somebody showing up with these expectations that are so far off from reality.
Yeah.
And then we have to deal with all of that, right? Like blowing up in our face constantly. And I deal with that literally all the time. A big thing that I see too is, and I don't necessarily think it's right or wrong, but when you get really elevated people that are freaking out, screaming, going ballistic, sometimes people can't even have those big conversations because they're not even receptive or they're too mentally drained.
Yeah.
To even go there, like at some point. And I've seen that with vets that have been out 15 years. It's like, just go to a specialty hospital and see what your options are. Like your dog needs surgery and they leave it real like that. Right. And I don't know if that's a portion of just compassion fatigue. I think it's really tough for me even sometimes because that's pretty much 80% of what I deal with is literally talking to people while they're crying and screaming and processing like 10% of what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And then I have that whole conversation and then they want to have the whole conversation again. Right. And then split it up into X, Y, Z. Maybe we do this and not that and this and not that. And a lot of that part of it comes down to money, but then it's another regroup after regroup conversation of, well, and I think giving an example of different scenarios would help. But I think a really typical scenario on ER is like a dog has no previous medical history, normal blood work from, let's say 3 to 6 months ago. And it comes in suddenly not doing well and can't walk. It's breathing heavy and it has like a hemoabdomen. It has blood in its belly. It's bleeding from a splenic mass or a mass of the spleen. And I have to have a full conversation with an owner about how their dog went from being totally fine to super not okay in the matter of hours. Right. And a good way to talk about that is, okay, if we talk about a mass that's ruptured in the spleen, the most likely diagnosis is going to be hemangiosarcoma. And when you give people the prognosis for something like that, with surgery being 1 to 3 months, followed by chemo 3 to 6 months, right? When you tell people right out of the gate, we would need source control, meaning getting the spleen out, stopping the ongoing bleeding. And those are the numbers. You could then kind of spiral in a million directions, right? Because first off, that's for an owner.
Yeah, that's a lot to take in.
My dog's just not doing well. Like it's the worst conversation to have because I would choose a lot darker conversations about pets that haven't been doing well for a long time, long-term clients. I almost think these are worse because there's no grieving time. And I think even subconsciously, there's so many people that they know their pet has cancer for months, or even if they don't know, right? Even if they couldn't afford to work the case up fully, they don't know 100% what's going on. And truthfully, a lot of times doesn't matter when your pet's not doing well, like chronically.
Right.
I think that's another
So would you say, from our side, okay, so what could we do to make this better though? Because our emotions are going to be all over the place as a pet owner, no matter what. Do we phone a friend? Do we need someone who's got a more level head with us? Like what would help in that situation? Like we're there, you're having to have a conversation. Like you said, we're only absorbing 10% of what you're saying because we're freaking the fuck out. And so
I think it's,
what should we do?
Normal, but I think the big thing is using coping skills. And I think it's different for every single person, you know, and I think that
because coping at 2 a.m. is hard anyway.
Whether that's calling someone that, you know, is going to
be level-headed,
de-escalate you or be level-headed, or I'm more of a person that just needs time alone, like to think. Like, and I think with those conversations, I assume people need time to think. And I think and I do have conversations where they're like, well, I don't want to put my pet through surgery. We talk about quality of life all in one motion. I think that's less likely in scenarios like that, to where I go through all those options and I literally will tell people, this is shocking news. That goes without saying. I think that you should take a second, but these are the options. And I don't want you to feel rushed. Obviously, there's scenarios where a pet's actively dying to where like,
yeah, we got to make a decision
stop
quick.
now, or you know what I mean? Like there's varying degrees of like patient stability there, but in a scenario where they're bleeding, but they're not actively like going to die right then and there, where we have to make decisions, which is dynamic too, which is another kind of thing, is like a pet can be fine for 20 minutes and then start declining more, and then they get more escalated and
things change quickly,
get more upset and more like things just change. Right. And so I think giving people time, but I think people not using the veterinary staff as their punching bag, because I get that so often, because when people need someone to blame, they blame us always. I've had people tell me I killed their pet, or all we care about is money, or screaming at me, or saying, well, I want you to talk to my veterinarian first. And it's like they almost don't trust you. And it's like, do you think I would come in this room and tell you these things if they weren't real? Like I wouldn't.
Because the thing is too emotionally fueled. And what we need to do is, like, as owners, we're just looking somewhere to point our anger, and we don't know where to point it. And so you guys are sitting in front of us, so you're getting it. And so we have to stop, just like we would in an argument with a friend or family member, or anything else that hits the fan in our lives. We got to calm down and trust that, as we discussed, you guys have the education to guide us through this properly. And so we need to take your advice and sit with it for a minute and think of what's best for our pet, and not freak out, because, and I know people freak out on you, but also we don't need to head up to the front desk girl and freak the fuck out. Nothing she can do about this, you guys. You know what I mean?
And the front can take it the worst. Other people, I definitely get people screaming, being crazy, but I think
the staff probably really gets
everybody else probably gets it 10 times worse, right?
Yeah.
Because they think they can talk down to you. They think they can, and that's another problem, right? Is like, let's talk about the logistics of most veterinary hospitals. I go in the room, I make the recommendations of like XYZ, whether that's in these scenarios I'm talking about, it's going to be hospitalization, keeping a pet there. For diagnostics, I walk owners through all of the diagnostics, and then I have my assistant or somebody make an estimate for those things. Well, that's like the second hurdle, right? Because I spend a lot of times, especially if it's a pet that needs a lot of things, I'll spend 10, 15 minutes having a full conversation about what each thing's going to tell us. And then probably 90% of the time, I get a message saying the owner wants to know what's actually needed, or the owner wants to know what we need to do. Right. Okay. So
because it's your job.
10% of what I said, which is reasonable, but we're in a scenario where we're in a high volume place. I'm dealing with 25 things at a time, always, right? And now you want me to go have a full conversation with you again about every single thing. And you're telling the front, and this is one of the things that drives me crazy. What does that mean to say, what do we actually need? So you're saying you think how busy we are, that I took the time to explain these things to you for no reason, and that we don't need any of this, and we're just trying to make money. Like, it's not a sensical thing. And I think it goes right back to like, it's rooted in emotional instability in scenarios where your pet's not doing well, and even more heightened when you can't afford to treat your pet. Whether you should or shouldn't is a different question. But I think that fuels people's anger, is when they can't afford treatment for their pet. And then it's not well, I can't afford this. What are the other options? Because there's zero things wrong with that. When an owner, and sometimes I'll even tell an owner in the room, the workup we're talking about is $10,000 to $15,000. And if they're immediately like, that's not an option,
then you can go right then and say, okay, here's the minimum.
It highly depends on what it is, right? For me to say, well, then we have to have a harder conversation versus, well, we can have an alternative plan where I can prioritize certain things over another, whether that's certain diagnostics or no diagnostics and empirical, or just treating the symptoms and seeing if we get better. Like, there's a place for that, but there's also a place where that's extremely inappropriate, right?
Yes.
Because you can't give fluids under the skin and Serenia to every single pet that walks through there.
Yeah, that's not enough. I wish it was, but it's not.
That's the problem, right? Is because people have this notion of like what needs done, and you'll see that posted all over Google. Like they recommended all these things that weren't necessary. It's like, wait a minute, you were asking us what an under the skin injection and what Serenia was 2 minutes ago. Now you know what diagnostics your pet needed. Like it's all just very slanted, and it's all fueled in anger and projection. And that's what it is, right? Because even like the story I was telling you the other day about a pet that was like a young dog who suddenly got really bad and was in the hospital, non-responsive. We resuscitated it. It was doing better, but not great. And then it started to decline again. We did more diagnostics. It needed surgery. I stayed hours late after I was supposed to leave. I stayed 18, 19 hours. And it all ended with the owner wanting my license number to sue me and how many years I've been practicing because their pet didn't survive and they need someone to blame. And it's like, I don't have any hard feelings towards those people because I come from the perspective of knowing where that anger comes from. And it comes from a place of grief and it comes from a place of hurt. And so I'm okay with being that person for those people, but it's like people want to talk about why people are fatigued. It's because I can give 100% of my all. I can stay hours late and I'm never going to make everybody happy ever. No. Right. Like I'm never going to make everybody happy. And so I've let go of that. Right. So when I walk into a room after talking to someone screaming and vomiting and euthanizing their pet and it's a horrible scenario and they're like, we've been waiting 3 hours. I tell people, oh, that's great. And I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, yeah, your pet was stable. We see, and then the amount of times I said, well, your pet was stable, right? So we go on priority. So if your pet was really sick, I think you would want your pet to be seen first. And that's how we operate with every single pet that walks through the door.
Yeah. Just like in human medicine.
Sometimes people are like, okay. And sometimes people are really receptive. Sometimes they're not.
Just like in human meds,
human world too.
You're getting triaged. These people know what they're doing when they're taking a dog that just walked through the door and you've been waiting 2 hours and that one goes straight to the back and we're all bent up about it. And it's like in human meds, we understand, oh, well, they're probably just way sicker than me. It's the same, you guys. It's the same in animal med. It's prioritized. And that's why I said, if you have a longer wait in the waiting room, that's probably a good thing. It means you're probably going to go home with your animal. And there's a lot of people back there that are not going to go home with their animal. Okay. And so, we just have to take a minute to like really, again,
and
give this a 360.
Even a scenario too, where let's say everything was similar in stability, meaning there's nothing actively dying, which is probably unlikely, but there are scenarios where things are not doing well, but stable. It's still the same scenario, right? Like, we see things as they come in. We work with the staff we can, and we work nonstop, right? So even if something's not actively dying, I almost don't eat a lot of times because I'm trying to get people in, trying to get people out. So for you to have some type of attitude, then go somewhere else. But you're going to wait the same amount anywhere. So who are you mad at? Us? Are you mad at the world? Like, it's just...
Right, because you guys aren't
another component.
You guys aren't in back... having a potluck dinner and playing with kittens back there. Like, this isn't happening.
Giggling while you're giggling that you're upset up front. Like, no, everybody's burnt out of all of that. And it's just too much.
Yeah. We're just not being very like respectful to other humans anymore.
I mean, I've had so many, and I think where I'm at, I get a lot of really, really privileged people who have never been told no, think they're the only person in the world, the only pet there. And it's so hard for me to have those conversations. And you can ask people at my work, like, everybody wants me to see those people because I don't handle it very well. And I straight up tell people this is how it's going to go. And you don't get to make the decisions on what I recommend, what we do, the timelines of things. Like, none of that is up to you. Right. And I get scenarios where, and every ER is like this, but I get scenarios where we get pets coming in, they sign stabilization, meaning if we need to do something before they talk to the owner, before I talk to the owner, that we can start that process.
Right. So you're saying, okay, just do whatever he thinks is necessary.
So
he or she.
A case that I still think about now that's kind of funny in a way, but like people laugh about it at work, but it's also like a good example of privilege to the highest degree, is like somebody came in, their dog vomited, I don't know, 30 times or something. It came in really dehydrated, started vomiting like 2 or 3 times in the cage. And I had them place a catheter, give Serenia an anti-vomiting injection, and started some fluids, at least because I'm like, okay, I'm not going to let the pet sit here and get worse, vomit, at least give it some relief, give it some fluids. We had stabilization signed, get a blood pressure, like get things going, right?
Yeah.
And most owners, and this is when I say you can't make anybody happy, because most owners would be so happy that like, oh, my pet's like getting some treatment. And I've had people sometimes where it's stable, not vomiting, where they're upset with me because I didn't already do those things before talking to them, which isn't standard unless I feel like we need to do something now. Yeah. And I'm not going to let a pet sit and vomit in a cage and back. Like that's just not how it goes. And so this particular owner was irate. I told them, well, here was the blood work we did. The first conversation where I said, oh, we placed catheter, we did these things. And I go in the back, there's 2-minute gap and they're freaking out, yelling at the front, yelling at the managers, everybody. The wife is trying to be supportive to the husband, but I can tell the look on her face is like, this is embarrassing. He's getting up in my face and screaming. And I told him, you're going to back up. You're going to lower your tone with me or you're leaving, right? Because you signed ER stabilization. You came here with your pet vomiting intractably nonstop. And you're looking at me right now and telling me you're upset that I stopped your dog's vomiting when you're presenting complaint of why you're here is that your dog's vomiting. So that's why you're upset, is that we stopped your dog from vomiting. He storms back. He storms back to the dog. It has a catheter in it. It's getting a fluid bolus. It's getting these things. And he says, get me my dog. And he has my techs take out the catheter. He goes back in the room and he's like, we just wanted x-rays. And it's like, wait, so you came in here. It's so weird. Like, I don't even know how to process that. Like,
right. You came in here, your dog was vomiting and all you want
for your dog vomiting. Huh? And you wanted x-rays. And now you're saying you didn't want the anti-vomiting. You didn't want fluids. So you didn't want to actually make your dog better. Pet. You just wanted x-rays, but you didn't know why you wanted x-rays. And it's all looped in delusion and not wanting, they didn't want to pay for anything. And I think that was a big part of it. But it's like, wait, so this is somebody who is yelling in my face, yelling at everybody's face, storms back there, has us take their dog's catheter out while it's getting fluids, to go have its sad dog sitting in its lap in the room while he continues to scream at everybody. I just told him straight up, this is ridiculous. You're acting like a child. I can't have these conversations. It sounds like you guys get a lot of bullies. It's like it's like a fucking bully. And they literally came in, and I say this all the time, they came in, bullied everybody, trashed everyone's mental health to leave with an exam and a Serenia injection. Right. And their dog in a few hours is going to be just as sick again. And an AMA. And this is why it's so burnout. It's like you have these conversations and it's like in one ear, out the other, for tons of reasons, whether people don't understand what you're saying or they're understanding every other word or they're too emotional to understand any of it. But it's like, it's so hard to navigate as one person dealing with multiple people, right? Because I talk about this Gucci loafer guy stomping around, putting on a show. He made all of the technicians in back really uncomfortable. He was very aggressive. And for what? It's like, for what? We wouldn't put up with that in human med either. If you treated your doctor and your nurses at the hospital like that, no. Like, no, you're not going to get the best care. That's for sure. And this actually happens to me way more than you would think, but you want to talk about, I can let go of people, the general public with no medical knowledge. I can let go of people saying things that don't make sense because like, I don't expect people to know anything. We don't know. It's my job to educate people. Right. But I've also had the flip side, and it's happened to me dozens of times where I have other health professionals, like human nurses and doctors, and questioning and saying things that I'm like, oh my God, these people are like doing surgery on human beings. There's no respect, even sometimes translational medicine. This is somebody who should have the knowledge and understanding to know, one, to stay in your own lane. Well, yeah. And trust people's medical advice. And two, it's like, that makes me lose hope in the general public sometimes too. It's like, if I can't have somebody who has or should have the medical background to be able to have an intellectual conversation with me, because a lot of the things I talk about are translational medicine and directly apply to humans too. And so me talking about everything I was talking about should have been totally within his realm. Yeah. Whenever I talk to people about, oh yeah, my son's a veterinarian, any doctors will tell you,
Oh my God. I've had literal human doctors saying it is way harder to get through vet school than med school. It just is. Because like human doctors are learning one body. You're learning like a bazillion different, right, body systems, and they all work differently. And you guys are like incredibly smart. And so I've had people say, oh no, if I was picking teams for like Trivial Pursuit or something that you need someone smart, I'm picking the veterinarian first because they're freaking smart. And so, you know, we got to think of it that way, like put trust in these vets, but also it's like, there are bad and good in every profession. And so we aren't sitting here saying that there are no bad veterinarians out there. Okay. There are.
I could tell you. There are. Sure.
There are for sure. As with any profession, there's bad teachers. There's bad everything. We're not saying it's bad to ask questions. Ask questions. Ask them respectfully. Okay. If you're in a non-ER situation, yeah, maybe you want to get a second opinion, and that's valid.
Yeah.
Okay. Right now we're focusing on like emergency med, like your pet's really sick in this episode, but just know that it's okay to question what you're being told because.
And that's the thing. It's how you go about saying things. And it doesn't matter if
you don't have to be a crazy ass.
Yeah.
Nutso-rama. Be respectful.
I always just say what the truth. Like I'm always just going to tell people.
I feel like that's what we need. It may not be what we want to hear, but we need to hear the facts. We need to hear how serious it is, and we need to hear what our options are. Then we need to sit with that for a minute. And don't go crazy on anybody. Yeah,
the issue sometimes though, and I don't have an answer for this, but like that story I just gave you was like 4 or 5 conversations, and there was no de-escalating. There was no taking time and regrouping. Like there's certain people that are going to be unreasonable. They're going to think no matter what it all, and they're going to question every little thing you do till the end, right? And those are the people that make it so hard. And I just don't know what needs to change to fix that. And I give an example of like someone within the health profession is because you would think they tells you right there that there's a spectrum from people that know nothing to people that should know it all. Because it's not to say that human doctors don't know things. I've had great, wonderful conversations with human doctors that I'm like, wow, you get it. I've talked to pediatricians, emergency and critical care doctors that just do peds. And they're like, wow, this is crazy. You do exactly what we do. And that's what's crazy. And that's why even people talk about like One Health, translational medicine, even within the healthcare in general, like people aren't even on the same page there. So I think there's so many layers of learning and growing. And I think the bottom line from like a veterinary perspective, and I think we have a social worker on staff where we work, not overnights with me, but during the daytime. And I think that's a positive step of like, okay, I can have these conversations with you about medical recommendations. And then when you need to have
an emotional conversation
of an emotional therapy conversation, like that's outside, like it teeters on inappropriate, right? Because I have had people, and I think people don't understand the amount of people who have told me like, I'm going to get a shotgun and blow my brains out, or, well, it's time to take that bottle of pills now. Like I have people say those things to me, right? And
like the humans,
I don't,
because we're distraught about our animals. And now all of a sudden you got to worry about the human taking their own life. I mean, this is too much for any one person to have to handle.
Going in a room and talking to somebody and they're like nodding, going in and out. And I'm like, are you okay? And they're like, I'm just tired. And I'm like, you don't seem just tired. You're like unable to keep your eyes open. They're like, well, I took an Ambien. It's like, okay, well, like there's just so many variables. They can't even all the stay time awake to hear what you're saying. Yeah, there's just so many variables.
So the bottom line here, I'm just going to say it. It isn't the animals. Yes, you love them. Yes, it takes a toll when you have to care for sick animals and everything else. But I know just from hearing stories from you at the end of your shift. Okay. I know that the real stress are the people, the owners, the humans, because you can do 5 euthanasias in a night with wonderful owners and you're confident you made the right decision and it was hard, but you leave feeling good at the end of that day, right? You did the right thing for the animals. People were receptive to it. Everything went well. Versus a night when you did no euthanasias, you saved the animals, but all of the humans were assholes. And then you go home super upset. You're in a bad mood. It took a toll. And so it really, I feel like from the stories that I heard from my outside view, that the problem are the damn humans and the way you get treated by us. Yes, the animals take a toll, but we're the problem. Hey, it's me. I'm the problem. It's me. It's us. It's the owners. And so what I want to do, because we want to point out that this is the issue, but also I want to try and figure out how to make this better from our side. Okay. I know in your profession, you guys are working on things, you've got even the social workers that you guys can go to and talk to and everything. So you guys are doing it, but from our side, what we can do. So I want to go over some things that maybe as veterinarians, you guys wish we knew or could understand. So I'm going to throw some stuff at you, some things that I think we can do better. And then you can add in what you think. So I think the number one stressor for us as humans is it is that when our pets get sick and we're going to lose them, we want to keep them as long as we can. Okay. But the money. So the money, it's hard to walk in, and it's different than human med, because when we walk into our doctor, we have insurance or something. We're figuring it out. So I think what I think a big thing is people educating themselves more on pet insurance. Because if we can walk in knowing that we're going to get 80 to 90% of our money back, right, from our insurance companies or whatever, that makes my decisions easier. Whether I decide to go the route of the biggest surgery or euthanasia, this helps me. Because it's the money that's so stressful. I mean, our economy sucks right now, right? Everything's expensive. And now our dog ate a damn sock that requires surgery. You know what I mean? And it's a lot. So are you seeing more and more pet insurance? Are you seeing more, or what's your thoughts on the pet insurance?
Yeah, I see it a lot. I think that changes the conversation a lot because it becomes less about money for a lot of people.
And more about what's best for your animal. And then I think
the conversation's less defensiveness about what do we actually need? What do we need to do? Like silly conversations like that are fueled in, I can't afford it. So that kind of conversation. But I think something to add that needs to still change is that a lot of these insurance companies reimburse 80 to 90% on the back end. But the problem is when your dog needs surgery or hospitalization for $5,000.
Yeah, you don't have that left on your credit card. Your credit card's maxed out, man. Yeah.
Well, the problem is either you can't pay the deposit, which the deposit for a lot of the things we're talking about is like $10,000. So even I've had people with insurance that can't do it because they don't just have 10, 15K.
Okay, so the pet insurance companies need to start, and I think they're starting to. There's some.
There are, like Trupanion does pre-approval. It's pre-approval is what it needs to be. Otherwise, you're saying to people, if my pet needs life-saving procedures, I still have to have a really large emergency fund, which is obviously like something everyone should try to have, but it's not doable for a lot of people.
Right now, it's not doable. And so yes, still get the insurance, because even in smaller things where like, oh, my dog ate the sock, it's a $2,000 surgery, like whatever, at my GP. I don't even have to go to the ER because it's 3:00 in the afternoon, whatever. Okay. Insurance still gives you the ease of mind to know you're going to get it back. But also, we need to start having insurance companies that pre-approval, like you said, we want to look. And I'm going to put in the show notes some links to some insurance companies that are recommended, both ones that reimburse ahead and after. Okay. And we just need to get in the habit of that. In fact, I know some human insurance companies are starting to add on where you can do a pet rider. So I think we can look into that too, like with our human insurance, because we care about our animals like they're our own children. So we've got to insure them like we would our own children. And we need to do it from the day you get it. Okay. So if you're adopting a pet tomorrow or buying a pet, however you're getting your pet, get the insurance right away. Then we don't have to worry about pre-existing conditions and blah, blah, blah. Just get the damn insurance. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to put those in the links so we can help with that, because I think that's a big part of it.
When you think about all of these bills without insurance, is almost like trying to get healthcare without insurance as a person, which honestly is probably underplaying it, because the prices in human medicine without insurance would probably be absolutely insanely more. So I think sometimes even when we conceptualize $15,000 for a full workup, surgery on call, like all of that, if you did that in human medicine, that would be insane, right? So from a medical perspective, there's so much that goes into that to make up that price, from the technician running the anesthesia to our board certified surgeon coming in at 3 a.m. to everybody being all in for your pet at 2 a.m.
It's already hugely less than human med.
There's so much value in that. So I think I don't have any problem in saying like, yeah, we don't do things for free, right? Like at the end of the day, this is still a business. Like it is. Veterinary medicine's a business, right? So
sure, everything is. Yeah.
People have to be charged appropriately. And yes, there has to be a profit. Otherwise, we wouldn't have doors. You
close your doors.
Like, that's just reality.
We're done. There's no more vets to take care of our animals. We can't do that. And so obviously insurance is recommended. And sometimes there's like, you guys have a care credit program where you could get credit and then, pay it off when you get your insurance back, whatever. Money is always an issue with everything right now. So, and this is no different. And then another thing I was thinking about is researching the breeds we're getting before we get them. What are your thoughts on that? Because we see. I
mean, yeah, for sure.
Because there are certain breeds that you got to go into it knowing you're going to spend some money on that dog. You know what I mean? It's not, you just are. And so do you have maybe just like a couple examples of that? Like a couple breeds you see often that traditionally need extra care that people should just know going into it? I
mean, yeah, I think the biggest one is probably like brachycephalic breeds
which is a smashy face dog, you guys.
Yeah. So like French bulldogs, French bulldogs are like the thing I see the most. I don't know if that's like an LA area thing, but I think it's maybe like one of the most popular dogs now across the country. I think it might be number 1 or 2.
Yes.
People have been talking about French bulldogs falling out of popularity now. In practice, I don't see that, but I see so many respiratory cases of French bulldogs, upper airway obstructions, all because of their anatomy just being inappropriate. Yeah,
because basically, right? So when they've got they're adorable with the smash face, but when you're hearing, you guys, when you're hearing that heavy breathing and that snoring, you're like, oh, isn't it cute? She snores. It's not fucking cute. Like they're right. Am I right though?
Yeah,
I mean, they're struggling breathing.
and I even last week had the same thing of like this Frenchie that was like teetering on upper airwaying, just very stertorous, that kind of stertorous, like loud upper airway breathing. And people get used to that. Like, oh, that's just how
they are.
No, that's like inappropriate.
Right.
So I think that
there is a surgery to fix that.
Cheap.
They're expensive dogs. So there are surgeries to fix this. So I guess what we're saying is if you're going to purchase that breed, just know that you're going to need to probably at some point have surgery to fix the breathing issues, right?
Because I think, these are also scenarios where, and every insurance is different, right? Because some insurance companies won't cover pre-existing things, meaning upper airway surgery, or Frenchies are also prone to slipping discs in their back. I see that literally every day, right? And so you're signing up, you're paying $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, sometimes $6,000 to $8,000 for a dog that you can't afford the care for, right? Because if we slip a disc, which let's be honest, the chance of you slipping a disc in a Frenchie during its lifetime is not low. And those are $15,000 to $20,000 surgeries each. Boaz surgery is thousands too. So it's all just a lot, right?
Yes,
and I get people that come in and they're like, well, we just paid $3,000 off of Craigslist for this dog. And it doesn't have to be a brachycephalic dog. It can be
any dog.
I've seen teacup poodles for $4,000 or $5,000 that they bought online, and it has parvo from Craigslist. But we just paid this money. We don't have that kind of money to.
Well, and then they're mad at you because they have to pay all this money to fix their dog. And it's like, no, be mad at the damn breeder that sent you this sick dog. Right. But, that's it. All sales final with those breeders. And so they don't give two shits when your dog gets sick. And also, and you're like, well, I'll just get insurance. Yeah. But I know for a fact it's more expensive to insure because listen, these pet insurance companies, they know the breeds. They know who's going to have the highest bills. Right. Because a mutt that I rescued is going to be cheaper to insure than that expensive Frenchie. 100%. Because they already know, the statistics. They know that this is going to make sense to dogs. So just go into it. Like if you have so much money in the world that you don't care about anything, okay, buy the expensive dog, buy the surgeries. Yeah, cool, do it. But don't scrimp and save every last dime for your $3,000 dog. And then you can't care for it. then you can't care for it. That's just,
and then
that's not what you need to be doing out there.
Screaming at everyone with your intubated Frenchie that, well, no. And it's like, no, like it's unfortunate. And obviously I feel bad for people, but it's like, you also sign up for this and you're an adult. So you went into this, it would be any scenario where you're caring for a living being and you know nothing about it. Like that's kind of on you, right? Because whether you didn't research insurance enough to know what's covered by what for your French bulldog, that's on you.
Right.
And also, if you can't find an insurance that covers for those things and it happens, that's on you, right? Because you're the one who signed up for this and you knew what could happen going through it, right? And I think that, so we need, if you know those things, then that's fine. But a lot of people get these dogs and they don't even know any of the problems they can have either. Which is like
because a lot of us just look at them and they're like, oh, they're so cute and cuddly. So bottom line, we got to research. If you're going to spend some money, I mean, I always advocate that you need to just go rescue a dog anyway. But because a lot of these rescues have already had them assessed and know what's going on. Okay, you're not getting any surprises. So I always advocate for rescuing, but also I know people like certain breeds and they want a certain breed. And that's okay.
Like at the end of the day, people can do what they want.
Exactly. Get whatever dog you want. Just be prepared for what you're getting.
Because there's also breeders out there that do it the right way.
Yes.
And it's very controlled and in a good way. There's a lot of like really not great scenarios, but it's educating people on the difference between the two.
It's still okay to go get a certain breed that maybe you really, really would like to have, but just be educated about it and make sure that it gets the care that it needs for its whatever genetically it's predisposed to. Okay, let's talk about this because this is one of the easiest things we can do. And listen, sometimes we don't even do the simplest shit like vaccinations and monthly heartworm and flea prevention. Okay. Because sometimes we're like, yeah, I don't have that. I don't want to spend that. But the cost of your dog getting heartworms is extreme compared to that damn Chewy monthly, right? Just give him the damn thing monthly because a lot of things are preventable. Am I right? I'm going on a tangent without you right now, but listen, let me just say, because I see the things too. Okay. So it's not that hard to just do your monthly preventatives, right? Do your monthly preventatives so that you don't have to worry about that. And let's just address this really quick. Flea and tick. Because we can go over to the old Farm and Fleet and get the collar, or we can get like the over-the-counter stuff. But some of that's dangerous. Am I right?
Yeah, some of them can have reactions to the different products, things like that. But I think I would say that's better than doing nothing.
Correct.
Like, at least for people that are trying to do something, I think that's better than nothing. But yeah, I think as far as vaccinations, things like that, I think obviously they're going to prevent and also decrease severity of disease, right? Because you could talk about parvovirus for an example. I get 3-year-old dogs now fully vaccinated, that get parvovirus, right? And there's a group of people out there when I say that'll say, well, then we don't even need vaccinations, right? But what they don't understand is we're talking about herd health. We're talking about, one, the dogs that get parvovirus that are vaccinated usually have a lot shorter course of disease,
well, that's the thing, because like
all of those things too.
Yeah, because like I give my dog the Bordetella because he gets boarded. Okay, and it's required, so I do it. Now he did get Bordetella one time when he was boarded, but guess what? He barely had it. Couple sneezes here and there. He recovered well, no problems at all. But dogs that didn't have the Bordetella, I mean, they can get a crazy cough. It can get worse. Things get expensive.
And those are breakthroughs, right? That's not talking about all of the cases of parvo that are prevented from vaccination. Obviously, vaccinations prevent. But I'm talking even breakthrough cases are better, right? And we're talking about like parvo is the thing that comes to my mind the most, is because we used to only even screen for parvo, like as a rule of thumb, less than 2 years old.
And now it's creeping up all over the place.
I had a pet hospitalized that was 3.5 years old with parvovirus. So it's wild.
No, it's wild out there. Yeah, and we got to do preventatives all year long now, guys, because we don't, like, I'm in Illinois and it doesn't get as cold in the winter anymore. Those fleas and ticks are like, they're surviving through the winter, you guys. It used to be, oh, you don't have to give it in the winter. No, you got to give it year round, guys, because I don't know what's going on with the ticks. They're strong out there. They're not dying anymore. They're sticking around. So we got to do this all year long.
You're a tick expert.
No, I'm not an expert in anything, but listen, I've had my share of animals. I know I'm talking from my side instead of your side on this. Okay. So it's important. It's just important. And if you're one of those people who's like, well, I don't think I need to give yearly immunizations to my dog.
My cat's indoor only.
Right. And you're like, right. But like your dog comes in and out and they can hop on it. I don't know.
And you, do you stay at it? Are you incubated in your house?
Right. Do you live in a bubble or yeah. Okay. But also here's the thing. If you're one of those people right now and you're saying, okay, I did the puppy immunizations. I don't think I should have to do yearly vaccines because I read this one article that said that's bad. Then guess what? Yes, you can draw titers. You can draw titers to see if they need it. But listen, don't bitch because that's going to cost you more. So this is what I'm saying. Be prepared to spend the money if that's your opinion. Okay. Like you can do titers to see if your dog needs them. Yes, you can. That's valid.
Scenarios, right? Like, are we talking about the core vaccinations? Or are we talking about risk? Because there are some risk-based vaccinations that people don't need to get, right? And that's conversations with the vet.
Exactly. Talk to your vet about it. Now, the rabies, guys, we got to do the rabies because that can pass to humans, and that's death.
And it's also like it's like a legal thing too, but yeah.
No, it's legal. Of course it's illegal, but I mean, that's kind of why, because humans can die, right? We don't, no, we don't want that going on. Okay. So there's three things. Now, here's a fun one. How important is it for us not to have fat ass pets? Because listen,
just like in people,
it's just like in people, you guys. Well. It's super fun to feed plates full of table scraps to our dogs. And look, they're so happy. They love eating all this extra food. And we just want them to be happy. So we feed the shit out of them. Okay. No, you guys, it's just like with humans. And here's the thing. We have total control over what our pets eat. So it's all our fault. I mean, if you break it down, it's all our fault because they're not living in the wild feeding themselves. We feed them and they can't eat without us. Okay. So it's our fault. It's our fault.
Well, yeah, but I've had this conversation, and granted, I keep my conversations pretty brief on ER about like a full
that's not
diet
your focus.
regimen.
Yes.
But I've had those conversations with people that'll say, no, we've tried everything. We've done everything. And I'm like, okay, well, your pet's had a full workup. It doesn't have any systemic disease that makes it harder to lose weight. So it's you, right? Like it's overfeeding because it would have to be.
It is. Yeah. Because I do it.
100% is. But a lot of people will rationalize even to themselves, like, no, we've been cutting back.
And you're like, okay. Are you? No, because it's like with humans. No, if you actually counted the calories going into your mouth. Okay.
And the thing is, I'll even ask them that too. I'll say, well, how many calories are we feeding? What? I don't know.
No idea.
Doing like 2 cups. Okay. So you don't even know how many calories your pet's receiving, which is like the first big thing to know that you're cutting calories in a healthy way for a long-term projected weight loss. So that's not even something you've been doing. So, and you're telling me you've done everything. So, I mean, from my perspective, I think I'm not going to be the best to talk to about like diet planning and like,
no. We don't need to get into all that because that's a thing.
But a lot of it's a little bit. Yeah.
But it's a problem. Weight is a problem. I'm just saying it for my purview. Weight is a problem. Yeah. And I know this, and I know it's easier because I have a multi-cat family here in my home. And it is way easier to just fill that damn bowl and walk away till it's empty. Okay? I'm there. And I just put all my fat asses on a diet at my house. And these cats are stalking me day and night. Okay? But they're starting to get used to it now. Guess what? We're only eating twice a day. Like, okay. And so, yeah, it's not easy. It's not easy. So that's another reason when we get all these pets, don't go into think it's just going to be fun and games. Everybody, these pets are work. Okay. Including bones. Sometimes bones just aren't good for dogs. How many dogs do you see in the ER that are chewing the bones and something goes down?
Wait, you just worded that. Bones aren't good for dogs. Like the big things I see. Do you mean like, are you talking about like rib bones or like? What
yeah, just, you know how we're like, oh, we finish our steak and like, I'm giving the bone to the dog, or we go buy these bones and then they splinter off and there's a problem. Like,
yeah, no, I think the big thing I see is 2 things. One, you're feeding big bones and they get stuck in the esophagus, which is a nightmare. It's an emergency situation.
Okay.
Or you feed them like a ribeye bone, things like that cause really bad GI upset, really bad pancreatitis, horrible for your dog.
Yeah.
As like the 2 scenarios. So no, I think as a rule of thumb, both of those things are probably not going to be beneficial. but particularly like bones, raw hides, I've seen those cause like esophageal foreign bodies, which are like emergency scenarios. So those can be really bad.
Okay. And then baseline lab work. I know a lot of people, we do it as humans, but do you see a benefit in, we bring our animal in for their once a year checkup. And I know you're an ER doctor, but listen, because you see the aftermath of when people don't do this sometimes. Okay. You're like, my dog's totally healthy. Should we get some baseline labs though? Is that helpful from your side of view because you can see what their normal was when they are sick then?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things about that. I think obviously my answer is yes. I think picking up on systemic disease early, if you can, is a great thing. And also trending, like you said. So if you got blood work 6 months ago, that doesn't negate the fact that we need it now. Because that's the other thing that's annoying is people say, well, we just had it 3 months ago. It's like, right, but your pet's doing really poorly now. And so those values can change just like in people in 3 months, they can change significantly and guide our next steps and plans.
And by having the baseline, you can kind of see how much more off they are in the last 3 months.
Yeah, definitely. But I think the other thing I'll say is a lot of people will come in with their pet really sick for whatever reason and say, but our blood work was normal. Right. Blood work is not the only thing we can do. We can diagnose a lot of things with unremarkable blood work. Right. So I think something else. Yeah.
Normal blood work doesn't mean something's not going on.
I think something else for owners to see though and know is that blood work being normal doesn't have to be a stopping point. Right. Because I've also on the flip side talked to a lot of motivated owners that say my pet's been having these waxing and waning, whether it's GI signs, vomiting, diarrhea. We've never gotten to the bottom of it. Our blood work's normal. Fecal was negative, and they've never escalated the plan to like anything else, right? Because a lot of these pets, when you talk about cancer, when you talk about a lot of diseases, blood work will be fine for a lot of it, right? And that's when we talk about abdominal imaging, typically things like ultrasound, chest x-rays. That's where like more of a minimum database, all encompassing plan comes in to correlate not just blood work, but correlating blood work to ultrasound findings, to x-rays. Like they all tell us different pictures of the puzzle. And so that's when it gets frustrating even too, when we're talking about estimates for owners. And that's why I go over what each thing tells us, because they're like, well, what do we need to do? You're recommending all these tests. We don't need all these tests. It's like, well, each test tells us something different. There was one test that tells us everything. Why would we be doing multiple?
Right. Because the bottom line is you can have normal lab work and still have a very sick animal that needs attention. Yeah.
The case I just told earlier about a bleeding splenic mass, those always have nothing prior. Almost always is like my pet's been fine, normal blood work, always been healthy. I can show you the records. And now my pet's actively dying.
Yeah. And you're like, I don't need to see the records. I see what's going on.
That is though, like if people knew there's options on an outpatient basis with an internal medicine specialist, a cardiologist, right? Because I see a lot of heart failures. And a frustrating thing I see, if we want to talk about general practice and hearing heart murmurs, so many people come in, oh, we know about the heart murmur, we're monitoring it. We're monitoring the heart murmur till when? Till your dog's in heart failure? Like that's another pet peeve I have, and something even in vet med that I think we can get better at from an urgent care perspective, a general practice perspective, is like educating owners that while even heart murmurs, for example, can mean nothing, right? They can be physiologic, mean nothing, but they can also indicate underlying disease. So when we document them on physical exam once or multiple times, and we don't even offer a cardiology referral, an echocardiogram, I think we're doing a disservice to pets, right? Because a lot of these dogs, and the classic one we talk about is like little dogs with mitral valve disease. They start with these murmurs that we hear at general practice. And we so often, almost always, I hear people say, well, we were monitoring that.
Yeah.
And then the disease progressed, got worse. Now your dog's in heart failure. If we would have gotten into cardiology earlier, started medications for the disease process earlier, assuming it's things like mitral valve disease, like we prolong the time to heart failure by a substantial amount of time with a good quality of life. So I think being proactive about these things before ER visits is important too, because I don't want to see you when your dog's in heart failure and dealing with all of that.
No, and
like, ideally, I want you to be outpatient with cardiology or with internal medicine, with these departments, so we're on top of it before it's bad news. The issue is people, and this is just what I've observed, is people don't want to take that next step, even financially.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
Until it's a problem. Like my dog's in an oxygen cage, breathing in distress. Now I don't have an option. So that's when people decide to pull the trigger on doing
so. Because here's the thing. Our general practitioner may tell us about the murmur, and they may actually say, it would probably be best to get an echocardiogram, blah, blah, blah. And a lot of times we as owners, though, we go, nah, let's just keep an eye on it. Like, we don't sometimes listen to our general practitioners either.
Yeah,
like it's
true. Yeah,
we don't listen.
I don't think it's like a general practitioner problem.
No, because they can give us suggestions and we go, meh, can we keep an eye on it? And they're looking at us like we can, but it's not a matter of can we,
it's how people interpret things too, right? Because a vet can say, well, I'm not worried about it today. That's not why we're here, but it's here. I think it's something we can monitor, look into, follow up. Like at some point we should get an echocard. People interpret that as like, oh, we're not worried about it. We're just going to keep monitoring.
Right. When they were told they should get some testing, but they didn't. And also a lot of us don't have access to, we live in an area where we don't have access to specialists. So that makes it hard for us too, because it's like, I got to drive 3 hours to get an echocardiogram. So then we think, is it that? You know what I mean? So we put it off and then we end up in the ER with you pissed off. And we're kind of pissed off at ourselves because we knew we should have checked it out more and we didn't. But again, you're going to get the brunt of my anger because now I'm here. And so sometimes we do have to stop and be like, what part did I play in this? Like I did know about that murmur. I did know I should have got an echo and I didn't. And that's on me. So what do we do now?
But then it all circles back to, and I think it's a bigger problem than vet med, is how do we expect, especially in America, which I feel like is riddled with mental health problems, probably worse than every other country. How are we expecting people in our country, whether it's my age, younger, the world gets harder to live in every way. How do we expect people day to day to function, let alone when their pet's dying and they're in a crisis, right? And that's why for me, and I feel like we're talking a lot about owners, like I am very understanding of people. Like I'm very understanding in where people's anger is coming from, where people's stress is coming from. So I take zero offense to it until it turns into a disrespectful tone.
Yes.
And an abusive outlook, right? Because there's a huge difference between you crying, sobbing, going through it and being mean, condescending and abusive to people. And that's the line.
Yeah, that's the line we have to not cross.
All the time, when
it's
you
okay
cross
to
the line
cry.
with me,
it's okay to be upset.
When
like
you
we
cross
cannot
the
take
line
it out
and
on
you tell me I'm killing your dog and you're screaming in my face, then it's over, right? Because you don't trust me. You don't respect me. So I'm done with this, right? Because I don't have to sit and listen to that. I don't have to deal with that.
No. And from my point of view, to all my people out there listening, I know for a fact you are getting nowhere fast. You will not receive better care by being an asshole. Okay?
No.
So you just won't.
If anything, you're slowing everything down. You're slowing everything down for other pets even.
Yes. You're hurting not just your pet, but everybody else's pets when you act like a crazy.
And the thing is, I've said that to owners and I've said, well, there's a lot of sick pets here. And they don't say it to me, but they'll say it up front. They'll go, well, my pet's sick too. Like there's people that really say, well, my pet's sick too. My pet's critical too. Even when their pet's not critical. I've had people say, well, my pet's critical too.
Yeah. So it's really just about words matter. You guys, the way we handle ourselves, that's what counts. It's true though.
It really is. It's all about, it's not about what you say. It's how you say it.
It's how you say it. So take a minute. If you need to take a minute and just shut your damn mouth and get your shit together, do it before you get all up in these people's faces.
Because then even when people question me, I think that there's total value in questioning everything, right? I think there's so much value. I don't expect anyone to come in and blindly trust me. And I try to do my best to make people trust me by the way I talk about things, the way I handle myself, the way I go about things. But I think if you're skeptical, then ask questions. If it's a scenario where you can get a second opinion, then get a second. I don't have any
problem with any of that.
I have zero problem. I've had scenarios where I'm hospitalizing a pet for whether it's for neurology or internal medicine, and I give my thoughts on something and I say, but if they say something different, I would go with what they say because they're going to be experts in this.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
I will outright tell people, I don't know. I say that all the time. I don't know. I don't know what's wrong with your pet. I don't know.
Yeah, we haven't figured it out yet. And that's honestly safer than someone, even in whether it's human med or vet med, it's safer to have someone honest like that and send you on to a specialist that knows more than to pretend that they're God and they know it all and then they screw the whole thing up. I would prefer my doctor to say, I'm not sure. Here's what we can do though.
And there's not a lot of scenarios where you walk into, at least in vet med on ER, where you walk into a room and you know 100% what the problem is anyways. Like there's cases, sure, that I do. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of scenarios where I'm like, that's where the diagnostics have to guide us, right? Because I can't tell you what's wrong with your pet. Obviously, there's things that we can diagnose with just baseline in-house blood work and a physical exam. Like there's quite a few things, but there's also a ton of things that we can't. Right. And so for people to have an expectation that I'm going to do a physical exam and always be able to say, this is what your dog has, is so unrealistic. Think about that in human medicine. Yeah, how many times have you went to the doctor, they did a maybe physical exam or whatever, and they just know what's wrong with you?
No, you got to go do the things. Yep. To figure it all out.
Like sometimes I think even in vet med, we do even more sometimes, like with x-rays on coughing dogs. I've been to human medicine where I've had x-rays once ever.
No, we can hack up a lung and no one's ordering an x-ray sometimes. You guys are on it.
I feel like in a lot of ways we go above and beyond and it's still never enough.
No.
So it's like when.
So here's another one. We've done the vaccine. We've been talking about all the things people can do because this can be a big debate out there. Fixing your pet. It's the simplest thing to spay or neuter your damn pet, but so many people will not do it. And I've heard every story in the world. Well, the breeder told me that I'll stunt its growth, that you don't fix this breed. You don't fix this one. You don't fix that. Well, what's your take on this whole getting your animal fixed?
Obviously, I think you should get your pet fixed. I think I just really struggle. Like I said, on ER,
I know it's not what you guys have to deal with on ER.
And I have these conversations, but I streamline them because I just cannot sit and have a 10-minute debate about your breeder this. Like, I don't care, to be totally honest. I don't care what your breeder said. I don't care about any of that. I can give you my opinion on it, but I'm not going to argue and debate something on emergency. But I think the bottom line when we talk about spaying your dog is it's decreasing risk of cancer. Your dog's probably going to get a pyometra, an infection of its uterus, and need emergency surgery, which is when I see you. Right. So I think if you want to risk all of that and the health of your dog, great. I think if you want to talk about delaying time to a spay, I think that makes sense in some breeds, like bigger dogs. Sometimes they do get spayed a little bit later in life, and that's totally appropriate. But I think you'll be very pressed to find any veterinarian anywhere that will tell you, no, we shouldn't spay or neuter your dog.
Is there an age where they're too old to do it? Is there ever an age that's too old? Because I've had people say that too, like,
no,
oh my God,
no.
8.
I think that, like, if you want to use like female dogs as an example, I think if it's an 8 or 9-year-old dog that's never had a pyometra, I think the benefits of a spay are going to be more so to prevent life-threatening systemic infections from an infection in the uterus. But I think if you're going to wait years and years and years, you're really missing your window to decrease prevalence of cancer, right? Because even I think, and don't quote me on it because I'm not super well versed now, but I think after like the first or second heat cycle, the risk of developing mammary cancer goes from like 3% to 27% after like the second cycle. So like the timing to decrease risk of cancer is more important when they're younger.
Yeah.
I would say
and also, just to verify for everyone out there, old dogs can still get pregnant. I think we think they're like humans. They're too old to get pregnant. That's not true, you guys. Dogs can be very, very young, younger than you think. Okay. And they can be much older than you would think, and they will still get pregnant. And my God, why would your geriatric dog want to be pregnant? Right? Let's not do that to him either. Yeah. That's too much. And if you're not a legitimate breeder, what freaking reason do you have to not fix your pets? Because it's just silly. This just goes back to being able to afford these animals. If you're going to afford a pet, you got to know that it's more than their food you need to afford, right? You've got to fix them. You've got to do these monthlies. Like you got to budget this thing out a little bit better before you just go grab. And these are
also things where when you research, you get insurance and you plan. There are things that you can accomplish with a plan. I think that's the difference between like ER and outpatient care is like you can plan for this bill. You can plan for that, like with ER, and that's when it sucks. It's like, I just got slapped with a 3 to 5K, 10K, but like all these crazy bills.
Right.
Which is a different scenario for most people. But I think if you can plan to get insurance to afford the care or save up for the care or consider alternative lower cost options, like there's a lot of options out there. There's places that'll even spay and neuter for free on certain days
for
in
sure.
a lot of counties. So there's really no excuse.
And the thing is, if you're, if you just want a family pet and you're on a budget, you can't, then, I mean, honestly, there are so many animals that need rescued. And when you go adopt from a rescue, they have already fixed the animal for you. They have already done the immunizations for you. Right. And so you paying that $100, $150 adoption fee is like nothing.
Well, that's to cover their dewormer that they gave. That's just to cover the care they're giving it all. Then go that route. That's a great route to go anyway. Adopting an animal, adopting an adult animal that has already been assessed for major medical issues. Because a lot of the rescues will do that already. Okay. So then you go into it kind of knowing now you're going to get home. It's going to have illnesses. They're still going to be expensive, but that's a route to go. If you're just thinking about like total budget wise, but you would like a family pet. Rescue. That's all I'm saying. Then here's what I want to know. And I'm going to have you tell this story. Just honesty. Guys, when we get to the vet, there is no sense in not being honest with the veterinarian. Like they know. Don't sit and lie about anything. If your dog ingested your fucking marijuana, just tell them. Okay? Because they're going to know. They're going to just be honest. Because, for instance, you've told people will come through the ER and you know that their dog has ingested meth, right? Or cocaine or whatever. Unfortunately, you see this a lot. Right? Mm-hmm. Because our animals get into not just our food, they're going to get into whatever you got around the house. I think that's what's funny is like a meth dog is very classic. A high dog on THC is really classic.
Like, so when they walk in.
Like the one a couple weeks ago I had this dog that tested positive for ecstasy, meth, and it was like rolling around, absolutely compulsive, out of its mind. It's sad to see. Mm-hmm. And they declined stabilization, meaning I can't do anything for the dog. Like we can get vitals, we can do an exam.
Why are they even there though? Then? I don't understand.
I don't know, because I walk in the room. It's a 2-year-old dog that was fine. Then it was in the backyard. 30 minutes later, it wasn't fine. Already a big red flag. If I hadn't seen the dog, it would be a red flag. I already had my thoughts on what the dog, and I straight up asked the owner. My assistant got the history first. They swore there was nothing in the house, nothing possible. There was no recent walk. Sometimes I don't even want to deal with the fake stories where I'm like, were we on a walk? Like, let me give you an out. Is someone on ADHD meds? Like, just give me an out. We can treat it. Doesn't change my plan anyways.
Just give me a story. Okay, let's go.
Give me a fucking out. Like sometimes I'll literally try to give people the out because I don't really care. Like, I don't care. I don't care where the drugs came from. I don't care at all about any of that. I just want to get the plan going. Animal.
If your dog does ingest some of your drugs, your friend's drug, it doesn't have to be yours. Go in and tell them it's your fucking friend that doesn't even live with you anymore. I don't know. But just be honest, because your animal's going to get the proper care quicker. Because trust me, these vets already know. They know.
And I told these people that. I was like, well, I think we should urine drug screen your dog. And I think we should hospitalize your dog for support because it's really high. And they were like, but there's no drugs. That's not possible. And I'm like, your dog, I would be willing to bet on something. Like, I would find that really unlikely for your dog to be acting this way. And I don't say that lightly. I don't know where the drugs came from. But I think if your dog tests negative for those drugs, we can regroup. But it would be more scary than drugs would be something else going on inside your dog's brain that's causing all this. That would make me more worried.
Right. You'd rather they just told you what drug it got into. Or you could end up with a bunch of tests you didn't need.
And the wide range of like meth dogs do okay with care in hospital and time. So like either way, and then it's this conversation back and forth with them. And I'm like, oh, this is such a waste of my time right now at 2:30 in the morning. And like clearly your dog's high, but it ends up testing positive for meth, testing positive for ecstasy, like all this stuff. And I go in and I confirm it with the husband on the phone and they're like, what? And then they're going into all these stories.
Yeah.
They're going into all these stories about how, well, this neighbor, that. And then I'm like, I just have to tell them again, I don't care, right? Like, I don't care. I've never walked in here saying, like, judging or.
Yeah, you're not there to judge.
I'm just telling you my clinical judgment on what I think is going on. And I want to prioritize what I think we need to do, right? Because I don't want to do all of these diagnostics that we don't need when all we need to do, like,
is treat it for the overdose.
Thing is too, this is an example of people wanting to do everything but what I think we need to do. That's another example of like, sometimes they feel like you can't win with people in general, but we ended up doing all the things. They approved everything, but it's like that uphill battle with people like that too, of them like freaking out, right?
Right.
To be honest, they were a mild example because a lot of the meth dogs or drug animals in general, I see like the owners are on drugs too. And so it's like talking to children.
You can't talk. There's nobody that knows what's going on in that room. Yeah. No.
Me having to tell people, sit down, speak when you're spoken to. Like a lot of times when people are that, like,
you have to treat them like a child, a young child. You have to treat them like
children.
Yes, because you're like, okay,
they literally
please sit back
can't
down.
think linear. They can't form complete thoughts. And it's just really tough to navigate that when a pet's like suffering.
Okay. So this is a good spot because I want to ask you this. Some people won't go to the vet because they're afraid of getting turned in. So then someone's going to come take my pet from me. I'm going to give you a couple of scenarios and you tell me if these are ones where you actually would turn them into any authorities or no, you're just here to take care of their pet. So in the case of the drugs, a dog comes in, the test comes back positive for whatever. Meth, cocaine, I don't know, ecstasy, I don't even know all the drugs, but comes back. Are you required to turn them into human police?
No.
Okay. So you're going to treat their dog. You're going to care for their dog. They're going to go back home, which sucks because it may happen to them again, but you don't actually have an obligation, nor do you really have the time or care
and
to bust everybody.
Yeah.
No.
And a lot of these things, technically it's not really the police. It's more of animal control where they do wellness checks if there's other pets in the home. And it's not really, for me, what makes me want to report people isn't what the dog got into or the dog's condition. And it's all about how the owner talks about it. That's usually upsets me, right? When it's a scenario where they don't care that their dog's on drugs or they gave the dog drugs or stupid shit like that makes me mad. Or
like if they're not remorseful at all.
Here's a good example of a scenario where I wouldn't turn them in otherwise, but I turned them in was I had this dog like maybe 4 or 5 months after I graduated that had symptoms consistent with tetanus. The owner had a laceration on one of its ear that they duct taped and they duct taped the ear and they put a rubber band around the ear for 2 weeks.
Oh God.
The dog had a rubber band and duct tape around its ear for 2 weeks. It was lacerated. So they were trying to like fix it at home with whatever. People do a lot of stuff, like weird stuff, but it comes in like, looks like it has tetanus, which isn't crazy common, but it's like one of those things you can see. And owners, like I said, can do a lot of things that we would say are stupid, but people are people and people don't know better. And I don't judge people for doing things as long as they're receptive to feedback and what not to do next time.
Yeah.
And like, that's why they're there. Right. But this particular owner explained all the things he could have given 2 shits less about all of it. And we ended up euthanizing the pet. And I was saying to him after the euthanasia, I said, I'm so sorry. Like, this is a shock. Just take some time. Like, and he says, I don't need time, throws the dog at me and says, I'm just going to get another one.
The physical dog?
He throws the dog at me
for God's sake.
And says, I'm just going to get another one. And I looked at him and I said, I don't think you should ever get another animal ever again.
Good for you. I walked out. He shouldn't.
And I reported him because that's a scenario where people did dumb shit to their dog.
And don't care.
And actually don't give a shit about the dog. Like he could have given a shit last the whole time.
Because then you have to worry about if there are other animals in that home at risk.
And that was my worry is like, there's other animals at home and he doesn't even care. But if that would have been the same exact scenario, which is a sad scenario, but the owner was like, I can't believe I did that. I'm so sorry. Or not even sorry. Don't say sorry to me. Say, just show empathy towards your dog, like show a human element towards your dog. And then I'm like, okay, people do dumb shit, but everybody does dumb things all over the place.
In the drug scenario, you had said you wouldn't necessarily call the police or anything else on, right? If they're remorseful, like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. They got into my weed. It will not happen again. Like blah, blah, blah. You're not calling on them. Okay. So those are those scenarios. And then I know people worry about this too. And this isn't, and I know this is more of a gen med thing, but all of my immunizations are out of date. All right. I'm 3 freaking years behind on immunizations. And so now I don't want to go to the vet because I'm afraid they're going to turn me in and take my dog. That's not a thing, right?
No,
if you're there, if you're at the vet with the intention of doing the right thing, right? And you say, listen, and just be honest. Yep. I'm overdue. Life happens. I didn't get these immunizations. I'm sorry.
And that's a very mild example. That happens all the time. You wouldn't even need a big story. You could just say, I'm really behind. I haven't been keeping up. I'm here for vaccinations. Or just say, I'm here for vaccinations. I don't even think you would need to explain it. Just, I'm here for vaccinations.
I know my dog's sick. I know we need vaccinations. Let's see where we're at today with their illness. But I definitely do want to catch up on those vaccines. Or someone who comes in and their dog hasn't been groomed appropriately. They've got some mats going on. And so it's like, oh, I don't want them to steal my dog. Well, are you there? If you're there and you're honest, right? And you're there to say, this is out of hand. I know. I couldn't afford to get him groomed recently. I'm sorry, but I do want to take care of this. Okay. No one's turning you in. You're trying to do the right thing. Now, if you walk into the ER and your dog, because I've heard this story, you guys, and your dog's covered in being eaten alive by maggots. Okay. Now we've got a fucking problem. Okay. Because how many other dogs are at home? And even with that, how are you acting? Are you remorseful? Do you want to get this taken care of? Or like you said, you've had people come in with their dogs wrapped in blankets and you pull the blanket back and the dog's being eaten alive by fucking maggots. Well,
we had one owner that was trying to dump the dog at the front door. And then it was actually other clients that got upset and like were the ones who flagged the front desk down there. Because they were like, where are you going?
Oh, and yeah, let me just drop
my dip his dog that had hundreds of maggots covering its body and it was non-ambulatory. Those are the people that I'm like, you were going to dip your dog that you've had 13 years?
No, they're the ones getting the calls on them because we got to see if you got more pets at home now because that was wrong.
Yeah, it's just wild.
And it's just awful. And it's like, okay, I get it. But like, yeah. And also, some people just want to sit home and watch their pets slowly die at home because they don't think they can even afford euthanasia and they're keeping them alive for their benefit, not the dog's benefit.
Or it's even people that are like, well, we can't afford euthanasia. It's like, well, if your pet's that sick, my clinic, especially, we do mercy euthanasias for free if the pet's suffering.
Yes.
We don't even charge.
Yeah. So keep that in mind, you guys, if they're like, if the best option is for your animal to be euthanized because the illness and everything is just too far, it is still the right thing to take them in to a general doctor or to the emergency room, whatever. Because yes, a lot of times they will do the euthanasia free of charge. They aren't going to do a whole workup free of charge necessarily. It's still on you as an owner to do the right thing, to put your own feelings aside. We know you love your dog. You know, you want to keep them as long as you can. But if that dog is suffering, nope, we can't do that. We have to look at that from a 360 and say what's best for my animal, even if it's not best for me right now, is euthanasia, right? And that's what we got to do. And like you said, most places will do a mercy euthanasia if you truly can't afford it. They will do it free of charge, just
somewhere in the area. Yeah.
Yes, because like nobody wants to in
general do that.
Yes, nobody wants to see animals suffering. Period. End of story. And if you're there and you're caring and you really want to do the right thing, but you can't afford it, like you still got to go in. You got to go in and just be honest, because like I had said, like veterinarians and everyone in that career, those fields are caring people or they wouldn't be in that field. They do love animals or they wouldn't be doing it because they're not making a ton of money, you guys. Okay. So they care and they are going to help you as much as they possibly can. Keeping in mind too, it still is a business. They're not going to do everything for free and discounted because they just can't, or the doors will close and you will have nowhere to go with your sick pet. Can you think of anything else that we just don't know about that we should be doing to help not just our pets, but to help the humans taking care of our pets?
I think the biggest thing is just knowing what you're going to need in a crisis or in general to get you through in a public setting.
Okay.
Like what's going to get you through so that you don't embarrass yourself, you don't abuse people around you, because just because you abuse people and say sorry after doesn't change anything, right? Because a lot of those people say,
right, you can't take your words back.
That after it's like, but you just put on a show for an hour and a half, right? So it's like preventing the hour and a half show that you put on, the circus show you put on at your vet is going to be the biggest thing, right? And whether that's taking a second, calling somebody, or neither and something else, it's like having your plan, right? Because I would also argue that it's not just about preparing for your next crisis at a vet visit. It's like preparing for life, right? Because I see it so often that I'm like, wait a minute, this is the general public, right? Is like people cannot handle their emotions. People cannot handle, and it doesn't even have to be their pets actively dying for people to act absolutely berserk. Like I've already said multiple examples.
Oh,
like
for sure.
People can be mentally unstable, inappropriate, condescending, off the charts, and their pet can be totally fine. So I feel like the worry I have and the ask I have is for people where their pet's doing okay, or at least fine, and they're still rude, they're still condescending, they're still all over the place, right? Is the biggest thing, because the emotions are going to happen. And I think it would be unnatural and honestly scare me more if somebody had no emotions about their dying pet. That would scare me more.
Yeah.
So it has nothing to do with the emotional component.
No.
It's all to do with how you channel your emotions and how you react to your emotions to people around you. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah. And that's not going to help
and
us
people
just at the vet.
Really, yeah.
That's going to help us in life, everybody, because we shouldn't be treating anyone like this. I know we're focused on the veterinary med today, but we should not be treating the person bagging our groceries like that. We should not be treating our server like that. We should not be treating our teachers like nobody. In general, we've all got to learn how to keep our shit together.
I've literally been talking to owners and their pet's like going to go home. It's not actively dying. And like multiple times I've had husbands, boyfriends saying things. And I'm like looking at the girlfriend or whoever it is. And I'm like, these are big red flags, like for your life.
I know.
Like this is the person you're going to be with.
Out. Girl,
like
get
I've
out.
I've literally looked at people and been like, oh my God, this is how they're talking about your guys' pet. You need to run. Like I've literally
Don't
so
have
badly
kids with
wanted to
this
like,
dude.
run. And I've also had people call, speaking of coping, I've had people call their significant others, their boyfriends, and they don't want to show up. They're the wrong person to call. And I'm like, you have to remember this after this visit. Like you got to remember the people that didn't have your back either.
No, exactly.
Or a lot of times they make it worse. I've had so many times when the person they call makes it 10 times worse.
Oh God, no. Okay. So we need a phone a friend. We need to all come up with a phone a friend, and it needs to be someone who is level headed, knows how to de-escalate our ass and talk us down. Okay. Yeah. And if we need to, just hand the phone over to someone else. Okay. And let them handle it for you. So pick someone you trust. Okay. So, all right. We need a phone a friend for sure.
Or even in bad scenarios when people want to leave against medical advice, when I'm recommending euthanasia because the pet's critical.
Yes.
And I'm saying like, you guys can take a minute. I do the whole thing of like letting them digest it.
Yeah. Take a minute.
Don't make decisions you're not comfortable with, but your pet could die at any time. That whole scenario.
Right.
And I go back in and I say, so what are your guys' thoughts? What questions do you guys have? And the first thing out of this one guy I distinctly remember was, yeah, we're going to take him home and see how he does.
Oh God.
I go, and in my mind, I'm like, am I talking to walls? Like, am I talking to fucking walls? Like sometimes I do have those thoughts of like, am I like, I'm being real clear to the point. One thing I would suggest even for other vets is sometimes lean into the delusion. Like sometimes the best way to get people to understand that it doesn't make sense is live it. So I will literally say, okay, so you want to see how things get better. What do you think is going to get better? What are we doing to make that better?
Yeah. Throw it back at them. Like, so silence. What do you think's going to happen?
And I said that exact thing to him. I said, well, so what you're saying you want to see how things go based on what I've told you and what we've done. What going forward is going to be a plan that's going to be a quality of life for your dog? And he goes, well, I just want to see if he pushes through. And I'm like, right, but your pet's actively dying. And so doing no treatment and expecting that to change, and even with treatment, expecting that to change in a lot of scenarios isn't going to change anything, right? So what I'm telling you is if you take your dog home right now, your dog is going to suffer to death. And I worry it probably won't even make the car ride home.
Oh, yeah.
And this guy looks at me after I told him point blank, your dog's suffering. It's actively dying. It's in distress. Respiratory distress was this particular dog's scenario.
Mm-hmm.
And for him to say, well, I just want to take him home. Let's see how he does. Like that is so bone chilling to me for someone to tell you that your dog's actively dying and suffering. And for you to just say, let's see how he does.
Yeah.
And I remember the girlfriend who was there goes, well, I'm on the same page with you, but he's going to do what he wants to do. I so badly wanted to look at her and say, you're dating somebody. And obviously this crosses like a professional line.
Well, you don't say these things out loud. No.
For people like going to the vet or going into a crisis scenario, it's so important. And I've even reflected this in my own life as like, when I go through things, I'm going to make for sure who's around me and how they react around me. Yep. Because it's very insightful when you're going through a tough time, who's there for you and how they react. and you should make changes accordingly after.
Absolutely.
Because it's so wild to me, the things you see from both sides, right? Because you could say, okay, so she's not willing to say you're being unreasonable. You're not putting the pet first. She's unwilling to have that hard conversation with him. So in a lot of ways, he's
what
not
other conversations
from
are you
the
not
relationship
having?
either, right? He's not benefiting from that relationship because he's with somebody who's not willing to tell him the fucking truth. And she's willing to be with somebody who's that delusioned in reality.
Here's the deal. The way people treat their pets and treat animals, I fully believe tells you everything you need to know about that person.
Yeah, I think it's a red flag when people don't care.
100%. Because, I mean, even like my dog has one freaking FedEx guy that he hates.
Oh, God, here we go.
No, I'm not going to tell my whole FedEx story, but listen, my dog hates him. And I swear to God, I believe my dog. Okay, something wrong with that, dude. I'm not going to go too deep into it because he and I have already had some words. But what I'm saying is I trust our animals. Okay. It's like I trust them to tell me who not to like, but also humans that can treat animals poorly. It's the biggest red flag there fucking is.
I so confidently believe that it's such a red flag when people treat animals poorly that I think if you don't think that it's a red flag, you're a red flag. Like that's how strongly I believe that.
If you're out there listening
if you don't agree with me saying that treating animals poorly is a red flag, you're a red flag.
Oh my God, look in the mirror. No, if you're listening right now and you're like, shit, they're just animals. Who cares? Well, bye-bye. Like, hello, red flag on you this time. I can't thank you enough for being here and being with us and telling us how it is. Telling it to us straight, because sometimes that's what we got to hear to get things right. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I feel like one of our main takeaways from today is because, we started this whole thing talking about how the suicide rate is way too high in the veterinary profession. And this is not a joke. This is something that has to change. We have to change it. And I have all kinds of stuff in the show notes. I have links to different organizations in that can help us, whether we're on the pet owner side like I am, or whether we're on the veterinary side like Tyler is. Okay, so there will be links out there. But I think the biggest takeaway of what we need to do, because we've established that a lot of the problem is the owners. I'm just going to say it. It's us. It's the owners. And the problem is that we have to somehow figure out how to take a pause, because we get very emotional about our animals. I get very emotional about mine. I'm right there with you guys, but we have to take a pause, as with anything, and think this through and give it a 360 so that we can kind of reframe this, so that what comes out of our mouth doesn't hurt others, because there's really no reason for that, because everyone in the vet profession loves animals as much, if not more than we do. And they only want the best for our pets. And so for us to act like crazy people is not appropriate. And we have to take a pause and we have to do better. We have to do better. This is more about us, you guys. We're on this spiritual journey, and part of it is becoming better people. So as a collective, we're all in this together. Okay. And so it feels important. Obviously, this is important to me for obvious reasons, you guys out there. Okay. It's obvious. I am affected by this because I have a child in this profession. And so this is a big deal. And so I just want everyone to get on board and understand that we love our pets, but we also love our humans. Am I right? Okay. So we have to be nicer. We've already learned we need our phone a friend. We're all going to work on that today. We're going to figure out who we call in an emergency, whether it's for a pet or not. Who is our person? We need a person. We need a person, you guys, because sometimes it's too overwhelming for us. We're too close to the situation. Okay. So we're going to do that. And I think that we can all agree with, as I've put in the links and as I talked about at the very beginning of this, the Not One More Vet organization is out there to help too, because I don't think anyone can disagree with me when we end this by saying, we're not going to put up with not one more vet. We are going to get better. We're going to get better because this is ridiculous. And we don't want one more vet taking their lives because of the stress they're under in the veterinary community. It's ridiculous, and we can do better, and we're going to do better. We're going to do better. And so I hope that everything we went over today with Dr. Lovell helps us. Okay. Get a better idea of what's going on behind the scenes, what's going on behind those closed doors. I know it's 2 a.m. I know we're tired and we think our dog's about to, die. Honestly, that goes to our heads, even if they're not. I know that. And so we just need to take a minute, though. We got to take a minute. We got to be nice to everybody, from the front desk all the way back to our veterinarian, because they're all there to help us. And yes, it's going to cost us money. Yes, it's going to cost us money. And that is not their fault. Okay. That's no one's fault. That's how our world is, right? Everything's expensive right now. And so we just have to plan ahead the best we can. And then we have to do better when we're in those emergency situations. We have to do better. And we're going to do better, because there will not be one more vet. There will not be one more vet if I have anything to say about it. And I know you guys are on board with me. All right. So thank you so much, Dr. Lovell, for coming and educating us all and helping us get a better view of what's going on behind those doors at the vet. Thank you so, so much. I know this helped a lot of people.
It's always fun to sit and talk about all of the things that are going on. I think it's complex, but I think if people out there see both sides to it more, I think that's one step closer to people getting better overall. So,
yep.
I think
better do better.
Everyone listening to and being more mindful about the impact you have, not only in the veterinary offices, but in general in life, anywhere you go.
Exactly.
I think is important.
Yep. We gotta learn to hold our shit together, you guys, and this world's gonna be a better place. That's the bottom line. It really is. We can do better. Come on. Things aren't that bad. We're okay. Okay, guys, that's it for this episode, but make sure and check out this week's bonus episode with Dr. Lovell as we play a little game and he educates us on what situations with our pets require an ER visit. Listen, I know your time is valuable. And right now, I'm feeling super grateful and totally humbled that you chose to hang out with me today. If this podcast resonates with you, could you do me a solid and hit that subscribe or follow button? That's going to help you out because you're never going to miss an episode. And it helps me out because you're never going to miss an episode. And if you have 30 seconds more, could you leave a 5-star rating and maybe leave a kick-ass review? Thank you so much, and I can't wait to continue our journey on the next episode. Oh, and I can't forget the fine print. The legal jargon. This podcast is presented solely for educational and entertainment purposes. We're just two friends on this journey together, and this podcast is not intended as a substitute for the advice of a physician, professional coach, psychotherapist, or any other qualified professional. You get it. See you next time.